Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. If you're an Ubuntu user or you're simply curious about where the world's most popular Linux distribution is heading, then today's video is definitely for you. Canonical has officially revealed its roadmap for Ubuntu 26.10 codename Stonking Stingray. And I have to say, this release is shaping up to be much more than just another 6 months update. Yes, Ubuntu 26.10 is an interim release, meaning it won't receive long-term support like the LTS versions, but don't let that fool you. Historically, interim releases are where Canonical experiments with new technologies before bringing them to the next long-term support version. In this case, Ubuntu 26.10 will act as the foundation for Ubuntu 28.04 LTS, which means many of the features we'll talk about today are likely to become the future of Ubuntu. So let's dive in and take a look at everything that's coming. Let's start with the basics. Canonical has confirmed that Ubuntu 26.10 will ship with the upcoming GNOME 51 desktop environment along with the Linux 7.2 kernel. Now, if you've been following Linux news for a while, this probably won't surprise you. It was expected, but it's nice to finally have official confirmation. GNOME 51 will continue refining the desktop experience with performance improvements, polish and quality of life enhancements. At the time of making this video, the full list of GNOME 51 features isn't finalized yet, but every GNOME release typically brings smoother animations, better Wayland support, improved applications and many small improvements that make the desktop feel more polished. The Linux 7.2 kernel will also bring newer hardware support, updated drivers, file system improvements and performance optimizations. This is especially good news if you're planning to buy newer AMD or Intel hardware later this year. For gamers, creators and power users, newer kernels usually translate into better compatibility and fewer hardware headaches. Another interesting goal for Ubuntu 26.10 is delivering what Canonical calls a complete desktop experience on RVA23 compliant hardware. Now, that might sound a little technical, but here is the simple explanation. RAV23 is part of the modern Risc-V hardware ecosystem. Risc-V is an open CPU architecture that's becoming increasingly important in the Linux world. Ubuntu is continuing to improve support for these new systems, making Linux ready for the next generation of hardware. While most desktop users today still run Intel or AMD processors, it's exciting to see Ubuntu preparing for what's coming next. Drivers have always been one of those topics that new Linux users worry about. Questions like, will my Wi-Fi work? Will my graphics card be detected? Do I need to install drivers manually? Canonical wants to make that experience even smoother. Ubuntu 26.10 promises improvements to driver management, making it easier for users to get their hardware working without needing to hunt around forums or memorize terminal commands. The less time people spend troubleshooting drivers, the more time they can actually enjoy using Linux. If you watch videos, edit content, create YouTube videos, or simply enjoy multimedia on your PC, there's good news here too. Ubuntu 26.10 will include GStreamer 1.30. The latest version of Linux's popular multimedia framework. On top of that, Canonical is introducing new Rust-based multimedia plugins. Rust has become one of the fastest growing programming languages in the Linux ecosystem because of its focus on safety, reliability, and performance. While most users may never notice these improvements directly, they should help create a more stable multimedia experience behind the scenes. Now, this might actually be one of the biggest improvements in the entire release. Canonical is redesigning Ubuntu's installer. If you've ever installed Linux before, you probably noticed that partitioning section can be intimidating, especially for newcomers. Terms like EFI, swap, ext4, manual partitioning, storage configuration can be overwhelming if you're installing Linux for the first time. Canonical wants to change that. The company says they're creating a much simpler installation experience focused on safe defaults, guided workflows, and hiding advanced options unless they're actually needed. Think of it as making Ubuntu easier without taking power away from experienced users. Advanced users will still have access to the options they need, but beginners won't feel like they're being asked to solve a puzzle before they can even install the operating system. Honestly, I think this is a fantastic direction. Linux has become dramatically easier over the years, but installation is still one of the places where newcomers can feel nervous. Making that first impression smoother could convince many more people to give Linux a chance. Installation isn't the only thing getting attention. Ubuntu 26.10 will also introduce a completely redesigned onboarding experience. Instead of dropping users directly into the desktop after installation, Ubuntu will guide new users through setting up and personalizing their system. This first boot wizard will help configure settings, customize the desktop, and generally make the operating system feel more welcoming. Again, this is clearly aimed at improving the experience for people who might have never used Linux before. If you're enjoying the video so far and would like to keep up with everything happening in the Linux world, please consider subscribing to the channel and ringing the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. And of course, a huge thank you goes out to all of my channel members. Your support helps me continue creating Linux news, tutorials, reviews, and gaming content on a regular basis. I truly appreciate every single one of you. Now let's continue because some of Ubuntu 26.10's most exciting features are still ahead. Artificial intelligence is everywhere these days. Every company seems to be adding AI into their products. Canonical is no exception. However, Ubuntu's approach is actually pretty interesting. Instead of focusing on cloud-based AI services, Ubuntu 26.10 plans to introduce the first native on-dive speech-to-text desktop input method. In simple terms, you'll be able to dictate text using your voice, with the processing happening locally on your own computer. That means better privacy, potentially faster responses, and less dependence on internet connectivity. It's still early days, but this could become one of the foundations for smarter Linux desktops in the future. Now let's talk about what might be the future many Ubuntu users have been waiting years for. Ubuntu 26.10 plans to introduce a package-agnostic app center. If you're new to Linux, you probably heard people arguing about package formats. Deb, Snap, Flatpak, sometimes app images. For newcomers, it can be confusing. Which one should you install? What's the difference? Why does one application appear twice? Canonical wants to eliminate that confusion. The new App Center will allow users to search for applications without worrying about how they're packaged. Whether the software comes as a Deb package, a Snap, or a Flatpak, everything will appear together in one unified interface. Applications will have consistent search results, ratings, screenshots, descriptions, categories, and metadata. Advanced users who care about package formats will still be able to choose exactly what they want. Everyone else can simply install software without needing a lesson in Linux package management. Personally, I think this could be one of the most important usability improvements Ubuntu has made in years. Linux users often debate package formats. New users just want their applications to install. This new approach seems designed with that reality in mind. Ubuntu 26.10 also continues improving accessibility. Canonical is investing in the Flutter ecosystem to improve accessibility support across applications. This means better experience for users who rely on accessibility tools. It's not the flashiest feature in the release notes, but it's an incredibly important one. Good software should be usable by everyone. Business users aren't being forgotten either. Ubuntu 26.10 introduces support for Microsoft password authentication and multi-factor authentication. Organizations using Microsoft infrastructure should have a much smoother authentication experience. Canonical is also adding support for disabling local password authentication on remotely managed accounts. This mainly targets enterprise environments where centralized identity management is important. Most home users probably won't notice these changes, but businesses certainly will. Another nice addition is Ubuntu certified hardware information directly inside GNOME settings. If your computer is officially certified by Canonical, you'll be able to view that information directly from the desktop settings. It's a relatively small feature, but another step toward making Ubuntu feel more polished and integrated. Now let's look under the hood. Ubuntu is completing its transition from dbus daemon to dbus broker. Now, I know that sounds incredibly technical, but here is why it matters. Dbus is basically the communication system that allows applications and desktop components to talk to each other. The newer dbus broker is designed to improve performance, reliability, security, maintainability. For most users, nothing will look different, but hopefully everything will simply work better. And honestly, those invisible improvements are often the ones that matter most over the long term. Canonical is also increasing automated testing across the authentication stack, helping catch bugs earlier before they ever reach users. One thing worth remembering throughout all of this is that Ubuntu 26.10 is essentially a preview of what's coming next. Canonical has been very open about the fact that many of these projects are really being designed for Ubuntu 28.04 LTS. That means users who install Ubuntu 26.10 will get an early look at technologies that millions of people will eventually use in the next long-term support release. It's almost like getting a sneak peek into Ubuntu's future. So, should you install Ubuntu 26.10? Well, that depends. If you enjoy testing new technologies like seeing what's coming next and don't mind upgrading every 6 months, Ubuntu 26.10 looks like it's going to be a very exciting release. On the other hand, if your computer is primarily used for work, school or production tasks where maximum stability is critical, sticking with an LTS release is still the safer choice. That's exactly why Canonical offers both release models. Some users want the latest features, others simply want a stable system that can rely on for years. Overall, Ubuntu 26.10 Stonking Stingray is looking like one of the more interesting interim releases we've seen in quite some time. Yes, we'll be getting the expected updates like GNOME 51 and Linux kernel 7.2, but beyond that, Canonical seems focused on something much bigger, making Ubuntu easier to install, easier to understand, easier to manage, and ultimately easier for newcomers to adopt. The redesigned installer, the new first boot experience, local AI-powered speech-to-text, improved multimedia support, smarter driver management, and especially the unified App Center all point toward the same goal, reducing friction for everyday users. If Canonical delivers on these promises, Ubuntu could become even more approachable for people making the jump from Windows or Mac OS, while still remaining powerful enough for long-time Linux enthusiasts. Ubuntu 26.10 is scheduled for release on October 15, 2026, with the public beta arriving September 24, 2026. We'll definitely be covering the beta as soon as it becomes available, so stay tuned for that. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which feature are you most excited about? The new App Center, the redesigned installer, the AI voice input, or maybe GNOME 51 and the Linux 7.2 kernel? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.